All Quiet on the Western Front, Chapter 1, as read by Chris Fowler. We are at rest 5 miles behind the front. Yesterday we were relieved, and now our bellies are full of beef and haricot beans. We are satisfied and at peace. Each man has another mess tin full for the evening, and what is more, there is a double ration of sausage and bread. That puts a man in fine trim. We have not had such luck as this for a long time. The cook with his carroty head is begging for us to eat. He beckons with his ladle to everyone that passes and spoons him out a great dollop. He does not see how he can empty his stew pot in time for coffee. Tiedin and Mueller have produced 2 wash basins and have filled them up to the brim as a reserve. In Tiedin this is veracity, and in Mueller it is foresight. Where Tiedin puts it all is a mystery, for he is and will always be as thin as a rake. What's more important still is the issue of double ration of smokes. 10 cigars, 20 cigarettes, and 2 quids of chew per man. Now that is decent. I exchanged my chewing tobacco with Kaczynski for cigarettes, which means I have 40 altogether. That's enough for a day. It is true we have no right to this windfall. The Prussian is not so generous, and we only have a miscalculation to thank for it. 14 days ago, we had to go up and relieve the front line. It was fairly quiet on our sector, so the quartermaster who remained in the rear had requisitioned the usual quantity of rations and provided for the full company of 150 men. But on the last day an astonishing number of English heavies opened up on us with high explosives, drumming ceaselessly on our position, so that we suffered severely and came back only 80 strong. Last night we moved back and settled down to get a good sleep for once. Kaczynski is right when he says it would not be such a bad war if only one could get a little more sleep. In the line, we have next to none, and 14 days is a long time at one stretch. It was noon before the first of us crawled out of our quarters. Half an hour later, every man had his mess tin, and we gathered at the cookhouse, which smelled greasy and nourishing. At the head of the queue of the course were the hungriest, little Albert Kropp, the clearest thinker among us, and therefore only a lance corporal. Mueller, who still carries around his school textbooks with him, dreams of examinations, and during a bombardment mutters propositions in physics. Lear, who wears a full beard and has a preference for the girls from officers' brothels. He swears they are obliged by an army order to wear silk chemises and to bathe before entertaining guests of the rank of captain and upwards. And as the fourth, myself, Paul Baumer, all 4 are 19 years of age, and all 4 joined up from the same class as volunteers from the war. Close behind us were our friends Tiedin, a skinny locksmith of our own age, the biggest eater of the company. He sits down to eat as thin as a grasshopper and gets up as big as a bug in the family way. Hy Westhues, of the same age, a peat digger, who can easily hold a ration loaf in his hand and say, "Guess what I've got in my fist." Then Dietering, a peasant who thinks nothing of his farmyard and his wife, and finally Stanislaus Kaczynski, the leader of our group, shrewd, cunning, and hard-bitten, 40 years of age, with a face of soil, blue eyes, bent shoulders, and a remarkable nose for dirty weather, good food, and soft jobs. Our gang formed the head of the queue before the cookhouse. We were growing impatient, for the cook paid no attention to us. Finally, Kaczynski called to him, "Say, Heinrich, open up the soup kitchen. Anyone can see the beans are done." He shook his head sleepily. "You must all be there first." Tiedin grinned. "We are all here." The sergeant cook took no notice. "That may do for you, but where are the others?" he said. "They won't be fed by you today. They're either in the dressing station or pushing up daisies." The cook was quite disconcerted as the facts dawned on him. He was staggered. "And I have cooked for 150 men." Kropp poked him in the ribs. "Then for once we'll have enough. Come on, begin." Suddenly a vision came over Tiedin. His sharp, mousy features began to shine. His eyes grew small with cunning, his jaws twitched, and he whispered hoarsely, "Man, you've got bread for 150 men too, eh?" The sergeant cook nodded, absent-minded and bewildered. Tiedin seized him by the tunic. "And sausage?" Ginger nodded again. Tiedin's chaps quivered. "Tobacco too?" "Yes, everything." Tiedin beamed. "What a bean-fest! That's all for us! Each man gets, wait a bit, yes, practically 2 issues." Then Ginger stirred himself and said, "That won't do." We got excited and began to crowd around. "Why won't that do, you old carrot?" demanded Kaczynski. 80 men can't have what is meant for 150. "We'll soon show you," growled Mueller. "I don't care about the stew, but I can only issue rations for 80 men, persisted Ginger. Kaczynski got angry. "You might be generous for once. You haven't drawn food for 80 men. You've drawn it for the second company. Good. Let's have it then. We are the second company." We began to jostle the fellow. No one felt kindly toward him, for it was his fault that the food often came to us in the line too late and cold. Under shell fire he wouldn't bring the kitchen up near enough, so that our soup carriers had to go much farther than those of the other companies. Now Bulk of the first company is a much better fellow. He is as fat as hamster in winter, but he trundles his pots when it comes to that right up the very front line. We were in just the right mood, and there would have certainly been a dust-up if our company commander had not appeared. He informed himself of the dispute and only remarked, "Yes, we did have heavy losses yesterday." He glanced into the Dixie. "The beans look good," Ginger nodded, "cooked with meat and fat." The lieutenant looked at us. He knew what we were thinking, and as he knew many other things too, because he came to the company as a non-com and was promoted from the ranks. He lifted the lid from the Dixie again and sniffed. Then passing on, he said, "Bring me a plateful. Serve out all the rations we can do with them." Ginger looked sheepish as Tieden danced around him. "It doesn't cost you anything. Anyone would think the quartermaster's store belonged to him. And now get on with it, you blubber sticker, and don't you miscount either." "You be hanged," spat out Ginger. When things get beyond him, he throws up the sponge altogether. He just goes to pieces. And as if to show all things were equal to him, of his own free, he will be issued, in addition, half a pound of synthetic honey to each man. Today is wonderfully good. The mail has come, and almost every man has a few letters and papers. We stroll over to the meadow behind the billets. Crop has a round lid of margarine tub under his arm. On the right side of the meadow, a large common latrine has been built, a roof and durable construction. But that is for recruits who as yet have not learned how to make the most of what comes their way. We want something better. Scattered around everywhere there are separate individual boxes for the same purpose. They are square, neat boxes with wooden sides all around, and have impeachably satisfactory seats. On the sides are hand grips enabling one to shift them about. We move 3 together of them in a ring and sit down comfortably, and it will be 2 hours before we get up again. I well remember how embarrassed we were as recruits in the barracks when we had to use the general latrine. There were no doors, and 20 men sat side by side in a railway carriage, so they could be reviewed all at one glance, for soldiers must always be under supervision. Since then, we have learned better than be shy about such trifling immodesties. In time, things far worse than that came easy to us. Here in the open air, though, the business is entirely our pleasure. I no longer understand why we should have shied about these things before. They are, in fact, just as natural as eating and drinking. We might perhaps have paid no particular attention to them had they not figured so large in our experience, nor been such a novelty to our minds. To the old hands they had long been a mere matter of course. The soldier is on friendlier terms than other men with his stomach and intestines. 3/4 of his vocabulary is derived from these regions, and they give an intimate flavor to expressions of his greatest joy as well as of his deepest indignation. It is impossible to express oneself in any other way so clearly and pithily. Our families and our teachers will be shocked when we go home, but here it is universal language. Enforced publicity has in our eyes restored the character of complete innocence to all these things. More than that, they are all so much a matter of course that their comfortable performance is fully as much enjoyed as the playing of a safe top-running flush. Not for nothing was the word latrine rumor invented. These places are regimental gossip shop and common rooms. We feel ourselves for the time being better off than any palatial white-tiled convenience. There, it can only be hygienic. Here, it is beautiful. These are wonderfully carefree hours. Over us is the blue sky. On the horizon float the bright yellow sunlit observation balloons and the many little white clouds of the anti-aircraft shells. Often they rise in a sheaf as they fall after an airman. We hear the distant muffled rumble of the front only as very distant thunder. Bumblebees droning but quite drown it. Around us stretches a flowery meadow. The grasses sway their tall spears, the white butterflies flutter around and float on the soft warm wind of the late summer. We read letters and newspapers and smoke. We take off our caps and lay them down beside us. The wind plays with our hair, it plays with our words and thoughts. The 3 boxes stand in the midst of the glowing, red field poppies. We set the lid of our margarine tub on our knees, and so have a good table for a game of scat. Crop has the cards with him. After every Messier ouverture, we have a round of nap. One could sit like this forever. The notes of an accordion float across the billets. Often we lay aside the cards and look.